Yo, welcome to come on guys, you know what time it is. It is Gaming with your boy, which is me, Mr. C. And guys, as you can see, we have a brand new set because we got Season 2 coming to you in just a few short weeks, where our first episode is going to be the Game of the Year episode. Man, that's a sexy trophy. Who's going to win one of those? I don't know. Come check us out January 1st. But in the meantime, I do have Graveyard Gamer on to talk about Assassin Creed Valhalla. 1 month in, what do we think about it? I interview the Graveyard Gamer himself right here, right now. And if you want to hear my in-depth thoughts, go check out the Graveyard Gamer episode on Spotify, Anchor, Podcast. I mean, this place is... Dude, you can hear my voice at the gym, at work, on the toilet, in the shower. Podcast can be everywhere. So go check it out. You have no excuse not to listen to it. I once heard that on our skateboarding episode, a guy listened to it while playing Tony Hawk. That's Inception stuff, bro. Check us out.
Mr. C, gaming with Mr. C, gaming.
All right, guys. So again, here we are with Rafe Gamble of Graveyard Gaming, and we're going to talk about some Assassin Creed Valhalla. So first and foremost, man, I'm right at like 20 hours. I'm, a month into the game. Kind of where are you? Set the tone for us. How much have you played of this game?
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I think hit that 24-hour mark. So I'm right there in there. I'm really on the second map that you come to. So pretty much right there, man. It almost feels like I'm just barely scratching the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. I mean, as far as you're on the second part of the game. I know personally for myself, I haven't done a lot of story. I know personally for me, just to kind of give the viewers an idea, Odyssey is my favorite story out of all of the Assassin's Creed. So going into your thoughts on this story, what is also your favorite story, just to kind of give the viewers an idea, like, hey, maybe they love Syndicate and you love Syndicate, so they'll kind of have an idea of what they're going to like or dislike about this game.
Yeah, so, the interesting thing about that is Odyssey is probably one of my least favorite. I won't say it's my least favorite stories of the game, but just to kind of put the perspective between me and you on there. But my favorite game story was probably Syndicate, man, in all honesty. Syndicate, Rogue, something like that, where there's a little bit more flavor to it. And I got to say, as far as this game goes, I'm like you. I think me and you are both kind of at that same part in the story where it's kind of just, like I said, barely getting into it. But it's probably gripped me more than any game since Syndicate. So definitely enjoying the story so far.
Oh, wow. I was just taking a wild guess with Syndicate, so that's funny that turned out to be the case for you. But going into Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I mean, one of the things that kind of caught my eye, and I just wanted to hear your thoughts on it. Going back to The Witcher 3, it kind of like really redefined side quest, and I know you're a big fan of Red Dead Redemption. How do you feel about the world events? Can you explain to us a little bit about world events, and how do you feel about them?
I'm going to be honest with you. I think the world events are probably the best feature in this game. I think that. Okay. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like you said, I love Red Dead 2. I think these are very comparable to Stranger events, Stranger missions, whatever you want to call them. And I think you kind of nailed it, man. Witcher 3 came along and said, yo, here's how we're going to present side missions. They're not just going to be small things. They're going to be multi-layered. They're going to have many steps. They're going to be main missions, not part of the main mission. You know what I mean? I kind of feel with Assassin's Creed with Origins and Odyssey, especially Odyssey, because they were so long and there were so many of them, so many steps, that I just got burned out. So to go into this game, and they're like 5 minutes long, but they kind of they do what I think they're supposed to do for Assassin's Creed. It doesn't need to be Witcher. It's all about kind of getting you involved in the world, seeing what's happening. They're short. Some of them are funny. And the thing that I like, man, is they don't hold your hand. You know what I mean? Like, once you start talking to somebody, like I had one yesterday with two brothers fighting over a silo. And it's kind of one of those things. The game doesn't tell you, hey, to finish this is what you have to do. You kind of have to figure it out. I absolutely love them, man.
Yeah, no, and that's what's so funny to me, because I think with side quests, a lot of times they've have gotten to a point where it's just like its own storyline. And when you're out in life and things are just happening, you don't necessarily have this like life altering event. You might just have this old lady who just needs help across the street. It's not going to change your life, but it's there.
Well,
I think that
Thanksgiving dinner. You know what I mean? Like, you're there for the turkey. hey, everybody loves sweet potatoes. You know what I mean? But like, you don't want a whole plate full of sweet potatoes, and that's what I think some
Right.
games kind of turned into with side missions.
Okay, well, the real turkey for me is graphics, because that's what I love to see. So I know personally for me, when it came to Valhalla, you kind of start off in this tundra, if you will, of ice. And it wasn't very graphically appealing, at least to me, because everything was just white. Now they did a great job of kind of giving you this surreal feeling that you're in this ice. And as the world opened up, I thought the graphics were better. There was recently an update that allows you to do performance and graphical mode. I mean, what are you, I don't, I'm not at a point where I'm like, yo, this is the best looking Assassin's Creed game, because I thought there was a lot of times in Odyssey where I was just like, it stopped me in my tracks because how beautiful it was. I mean, what are your thoughts on Valhalla graphically, that presentation, that turkey?
So for me, I think it's kind of like it's in the details. You know what I mean? Like right out the gate. And now here's the cool thing: your listeners can understand. Like you have an Xbox One X is what you're playing on. I'm playing on a base model PS4, so two totally different systems, right?
Oh, for sure.
And like when I loaded it up, was I blown away with Odyssey, same PS4? And I'm like you, man. It was a beautiful game. The colors and things that they used. This game, not really. I mean, right at the gate, it was kind of like, okay, it's very, I would say, average for a 2020 game on a PS4, if you will, but it didn't blow me away. But the details, man, like that first map when it's Norway and it's freezing cold, and there's somebody who's lived in several cold places, like I got that feeling. The way they had the snow and the way the ice would be, and the sun would come up, or it would get real foggy. Then when you move to England and it's wooded, but it's the way that they have the woods and the details and stuff that I think really kind of make it stand out. I don't think it's a visual treat like Odyssey was, but I definitely think it's really like it's a good looking game, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And, I kind of liken it to Grand Theft Auto, how, like, one part of the map was like the country and, one part was the city. And, they did a good job of kind of breaking up that monotony in that map. And there's different visual cues that weren't there in Odyssey, because to me in Odyssey and Origins everything kind of looked the same. But going away from the graphics, I guess more to the meats and potatoes, or that sweet potato as you talked about, combat, man. I mean, what are we looking for in combat? Is it here? I know that it looks like they brought back the shields. I know there's a lot of emphasis on two-handed weapons. I mean, kind of walk us through that.
So for me, combat is kind of so when I first started the game, I'll just say that I really was kind of like taken back, like, wow, man, because Odyssey, Origins, like they had a really good combat system to it, and this has the same buttons, if you will, but it was like the input and the way it felt just didn't grab me. It wasn't until you start unlocking abilities and kind of really get into the flow of the game that I've started to now enjoy it more. But I will say certain things like when you're trying to dodge, to me, you just go too far back. I mean, like you dash across the map, and that can be really daunting because now you have to make that space up. But I will say a few positives is I feel like two-handed weapons in this game, I enjoy them in this game more than probably any other game that allows you to have two-handed weapons.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, they're just more responsive. They don't try to make them too heavy. My biggest disappointment is the dual wielding, because when I think of dual wielding, I think of like, all right, if you got an axe in one hand and you got a stone hammer in another, man, you're just like tapping the buttons left and R1 and L1, back and forth and using the different weapons. In this game, the secondary weapon, its default is to be your shield. So really, you have to hold it down, that L1 button, to hold it down to really get it's more of the power move from it. So it doesn't do what I wanted it to do. Like I said, I've gotten more used to it, but that part to me was a little disappointing.
Well, one of the things, since you talk about disappointment, one of the things that kind of I honestly want to almost say disappointed was the skill tree, because especially with Odyssey, I loved how you kind of were able to unlock these abilities and use these abilities. And then as you progress further in the game, then you can kind of get into the nitty gritty of like, hey, let me add a point to this, what gives me 0.5% more melee damage. But in this game, they kind of threw us a curveball. The skill tree is different. And now for the abilities, you actually have to explore the world and find these books of wisdoms, which I'm not necessarily for or against, but I mean, kind of what were your thoughts on the skill tree and the use of this book of wisdom?
So I'm gonna start with the skill tree first, and let me just say before the update, I really didn't like it. They just had that new update this past weekend, but after the update, now you can kind of see those major skills. You just can't see how you get to them. So you can kind of like, okay, I want to get to dual wielding two, handed weapons. So I enjoy that. So now I can at least see what's out there. But I'm not a big fan of like how many minor skills you have to unlock. Like you have to unlock like the 0.15 health and all these different things to get to those bigger skills. To me, not a huge fan of that. The finding the books for abilities, I'm very twofold on it. For one, I think they should have been the secondary, like because there's certain books, that'll say, "Hey, this isn't a new ability. This is to improve an ability you already have." I would have been fine if those would have been the ones you found in the world because I think they're fun to go for. It's something enticing to look for, but to unlock the abilities that way, I think it kind of hampers combat. I really do because those abilities are what kind of supplement your combat to make it flashy and stand out. So for me, I think if they were gonna use that system that they have implemented now, I would have said either one, kind of adjust what are you find in those books throughout the world, books of knowledge, or kind of reverse it, man. As you unlock experience and whatnot, allow that to unlock the abilities, and those skill points are the things you find in the world or whatnot. Because the way it is now, it's just it almost hampers the combat more than adds to it.
I agree, and I think it was just such an integral part of the Odyssey combat, and I also think that you're forcing people to explore, and I don't necessarily know that that's for everybody, so I'm not a huge fan of that. But there's been a lot of what we call quality of life changes in this Valhalla. You have no custom armor right now. Your eagle doesn't do any tagging. The leap of faith is not there in the very beginning of the game. Rolling is not there from the very beginning of the game. Matter of fact, if you fall off a cliff, you're pretty much going to die in the beginning of the game, which is, to me, a huge difference from anything I've ever experienced in Assassin's Creed. I mean, how do you feel about some of these things? Or do they not even bother you?
Well, I'll be honest with you. The custom armor, at first it didn't bother me. That now I've experienced a little bit more and I've started unlocking stuff. It's like, oh, I like the way that looks, but I kind of want the benefits of this armor versus that one. Now, to be honest, it's not as much armor as in Odyssey. Odyssey had so much armor that you could pick from that I think that option was definitely needed. In this game, it might not be as needed, but I think it's wanted. You know what I mean? Like, I think people like that option. It's always tough when a game gives you something and then takes it back in the next game. The eagle tagging, when I first played it, I was like, all right, man, cool. This is a cool new challenge to do. And, with Odin's side and whatnot, it makes, it kind of covers that a little bit, but at the same time, the Eagle Vision tagging enemies, man, that was like a staple for the last couple of games. Even though I'll be honest with you, it never made sense to me. Like, how does an eagle see it, and you now all of a sudden know where all these enemies are? But at the same time, taking that away hurts. And like the leap of faith and the hidden blade, to the way you have to unlock those. I kind of actually like the way it unlocks in the story, and I think it makes sense. But I'll be honest, that first time I got to a synchronization point and I jumped off and my dude just died. I mean, he just straight up died because of the jump. I was thoroughly, thoroughly confused. Like, what game am I playing that I can't just jump off into a barrel of hay right out of the gate?
Yeah, it was definitely a bit of a shock because it was like, wait a second, I just literally plunged to my death on the top of this church. Like, what happened? Yeah, it's definitely different, man.
Well, especially considering one of the cool things about Odyssey was I don't remember when it unlocked in the game, but you just basically could jump off of anything and just land and keep running. Like, it was completely game breaking in a sense, but man, I'm gonna tell you, it was one of those things that's like you're kind of happy you can do it, because man, there's nothing worse than just falling and dying. So for them to do that, I thought was cool. To take it away is like, dang, I like being able to jump off a giant statue and have no issue.
Well, and here's kind of my plight with that is, so if I jump off of this steeple and I die, you're just going to load me back on top of the steeple. So it's not really, to me, it's almost like game breaking. It's just kind of like uncomfortable inconvenience that, okay, now I have to manually climb down this church for no apparent reason. Like, it's just weird.
Exactly.
But so let me ask you this. We're a month into Assassin's Creed Valhalla. We're probably months away from ever doing a review just because of the sheer density of this game. I mean, what are your final thoughts on this game? Would you encourage people to buy this, rent this, stay away from it? I mean, kind of where are you at with this?
So for me, I'll just say this because I know you loved Odyssey. A lot of people loved Odyssey. I felt like Odyssey was one of the least Assassin's Creed games in a while. I mean, it was a great game, but it just wasn't very Assassin's Creedy. This game, to me, just from a story standpoint, I'm in love with the game. Like what they do with the present day, it really does a lot of callbacks to some of the original games in the series, and I love that. I'm a huge fan of the lore. There's just a lot about this game that I think, as an Assassin's Creed game, it's nailing for me. I'm in love with it. I mean, it's like I said, Syndicate's my favorite Assassin's Creed game, and this game has probably grabbed me just as much as Syndicate did right out the gate. So I definitely recommend people playing it. However, I do caveat it with saying Odyssey on so many levels is a better game than this. So you just got to be prepared to that. Because, I mean, hey, we even lost the ship battles, and that was just a blast to do. But at the same time, Odyssey had a lot of rinse and repeat moments, and I think this game kind of streamlines those as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think if anybody bought this game, especially if they've been a fan of any Assassin's Creed, I don't think they'd be disappointed. There are some differences, I mean, the underwater, there's like no underwater exploring like there was in Odyssey, little things like that. But, Ubisoft's been very busy, with Watch Dogs, and we got, Phoenix next week. And so, I mean, there's a lot to be playing right now. So, I think Assassin's Creed is going to be on sale for a lot of people. I've already seen an $80 where you get all three Assassin's Creed on this gen. So I definitely think at the right price, man, it's worth checking out. So I do appreciate you coming on the show and kind of explaining what your thoughts on Valhalla are. And for the viewers, we're doing something a little bit different. If you want my full thoughts and opinions, you can go check me out on Graveyard Gamer. And where can we find Graveyard Gamer? Where can we listen to it, experience it?
The best places to find it is Anchor. You can find it on Google Podcasts. I know a lot of people know about Google Podcasts, and also Spotify. And you can always find me on Twitter, and I'll have the links there as well.
Awesome, man. And I'll make sure I put all that into the descriptions. Did you have anything else to add before we...
No, just thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it.
Mr. C, Mr. C.